Hey guys, it is me, the dude who talks, and I have finally returned. After being defeated by really shit editing software and some poor cameras, I finally got something a little bit more stable. So I do apologise if there's a slight difference to the quality of this video. I'm working on something, so hopefully that will change. So anyway, yeah, 2020 has been a dumpster fire. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but one thing I will say, and this is a positive, that 2020 had a multitude of great releases. So I've picked 25 albums that I thought were exceptional and that were my favourite albums of 2020. Also, I'm going to be including some honourable mentions down below in the description section if you want to check them out as well. It really was hard picking 25 albums. I almost went with 30. So, you know what? Let's just get into it, eh? So, first album off this list is Asito with Singularity. This album was a blind buy for me when I was crate digging at a record store, and I noticed the cover and I really dig the artwork on it, and I saw the description was noisy space rock from Mexico, and I was sold. Now, I was expecting this album to just be like serviceable, but I was actually taken aback quite a bit with how good the album was. The album has lots of elements of krautrock and psychedelia, which make it a really trippy listen. So yeah, if you're into bands like Bdrmm Sabbathi and Stupid Cosmonaut, I recommend checking this. So next up is Ulcerate with Stare Into Death and Be Still. So the second half of this year, I decided to push myself into checking out more and more bands on the death metal spectrum. Out of all the bands that I checked out, I felt Ulcerate stood out a bit more. I feel like it did something a bit different. It focused a lot on atmosphere and didn't concern itself with being heavy for heavy's sake. And for me, that was a major selling point. And that has encouraged me to check out their back catalogue as well. So, the next album for this video, I had the absolute pleasure of reviewing, and that meant I got to listen to it before it came out. I'm talking about Chronicle 1, Part 1, The True Seeker by Mountain Caller. The album blends in all kinds of genres, and what comes out from that is simply a unique, fantastic audio journey that will take you to all kinds of places if you let it. You know what? I think that's all that needs to be said about that album. Just go listen to it. So, following on from Mountain Caller, we have Bdrmm with Bdrmm. That album had all kinds of hype going for it, especially on the internet. And I kept actually putting off listening to that record for like a number of weeks. And eventually on a Bandcamp Friday, they repressed the album on cassette and I took the plunge. A few weeks after that, same excuse really, just putting it off, thinking I'm going to listen to it the day after. I eventually listened to it and I decided for myself that this album was definitely worth the hype. While they definitely delve into shoegaze, they do enough to stand out from their own to stop them from being just another shoegaze band. Not only that, but the songs are really bloody good, and that just makes it a cracking debut album. Next up is Killer Be Killed with Reluctant Hero. So this supergroup featuring some of the most hardworking musicians ever, with the likes of Max Cavalera from Soulfly, Nailbomb, Cavalera Conspiracy, etc, etc. Greg Passatio from Dillinger Escape Plan and the Black Queen, also his solo work as well, which came out this year. Troy Sanders from Mastodon, and last but definitely not least, Ben Collar from Converge, who replaced David Icke from Mars Volta. So was this album worth the wait after 6 years? Hell yes it was. The varied vocals from Max, Greg and Troy really deliver on this album, and also the riffs as well, which is the most important, are fucking superb. So yeah. So I follow Cult Nation on Facebook, and sometimes they post about bands that are really heavy and they've got a really good description about them. Sometimes they say like, this is skull-crushingly heavy, or this will rip your face off. Sometimes these bands are worthy of their description, sometimes they're not. This one was, however, and I am talking about Black Curse with Endless Wound. I'm so glad I took a punt on these guys because it is fucking furious, the album. It's extreme metal done really well. It's punishing, unrelenting in its pace, and the riffs are just fucking hard. So yeah, go check it out. So I said earlier that I'm not going to talk too much about how shit 2020 was, but I will say that music was definitely an escape from this shit year. And one album that did really well in that aspect was this one, Narrowhead with 12 House Rock. With its influence firmly set in the 90s, it helped me think of much simpler times. And they definitely wear the influences on the sleeve, especially being influenced by bands like Smashing Pumpkins, Oasis, Soundgarden, etc, etc. But they don't just ape that sound, they inject their own ideas into the mix. Kind of similar to what Nothing have done with their sound. So, following on, we have Video Nasties with Dominion. So good that I got it twice. So I've seen these guys a few times and they were absolutely phenomenal live. So when they announced that they were bringing out their debut album, I jumped at the opportunity to get it. Basically, it sounds like John Carpenter meets Entombed. It's an album that really stuck with me, and to be honest, it was a bit of a breath of fresh air with a lot of bands that were just sounding the same, and then came Video Nasty smelling like a bunch of fresh roses. And, you know, it's horror themed, death and roll. What's not to love about that? So when I'm not doing videos like this or just listening to music, I'm on YouTube a lot. And a channel that I really enjoy on there is Banger TV. I really enjoy the reviews, especially when they cover lesser known artists. And what they reviewed was Providence by Ulthar, which is obviously next. I love that they Lovecraft influenced, especially with their name and obviously the title Providence. That is a big plus for me. I love their approach to both black metal and death metal, and it just got me really hooked on this record. It has everything that you would expect: pummeling blast beats, growls, and just riffs upon riffs. For me, it definitely stands out amongst the high calibre of death metal artists that have been coming out. Next up is Abyss by the illustrious BlackLab, another album that I had the absolute pleasure of reviewing beforehand. These guys merge influences from bands like Melt Banana, Sonic Youth, Stereolab, with heavier bands like Sabbath, Motorhead, and I Hate God. Abyss really took me by surprise with its raw energy, and in some places it sounded downright evil. This is an album that I highly recommend that you should check out, and if you need more convincing, please check out my video on this album. And yes, that was a subtle plug. Well, not so subtle really. So I was a subscriber to a record label that went, unfortunately, tits up due to some very disturbing exploits, to say the least, from the founder. And I got an album every month because of that. Well, before it went tits up, obviously. And one of them was Habits by Elephant Tree. So I heard the song Sails off this album prior and I was really excited. And obviously with it being on this list, Habits did not disappoint in the slightest. It's very blissful sounding and it makes for some very trippy listening. And it also has some moments for like slow headbanging. Kind of similar to the style of like stoner metal like bands like Torch. For me, it's an album that is perfect with a beer on a nice summer's day. Albums that really do it for me are when they're a breath of fresh air and that they do something out of the ordinary to make it unique. Mong Tong with their album Mystery is one of those albums, and Mystery is definitely the right title for this album, as it definitely has a mysterious feel to it and it definitely makes it intriguing. So yeah, it's from the Taiwanese experimental trio, and it's something that's really hard to describe, but you know, I have to try anyway. It's a blend of synths, samples, and psychedelic music, which help, in my opinion, craft one of the most unique albums of 2020. So this album is another one that was eagerly anticipating. It is the Ocean Collective with Phanerozoic 2. I really hope I got that right. Yeah, this album has everything that I know and love about the Ocean Collective. I like that they're pushing themselves further creatively by experimenting a bit more with more proggier elements, and also the inclusion of blast beats. I think it's a follow-up to the first part of the double album set, so yeah, enough said. Next is Svalbard with If I Die, Will I Get Better? For me, Svalbard returned this year with an album that definitely exceeded expectations, and in my opinion tops their last effort, It's Hard to Have Hope. It's emotionally charged and, to be honest, very intense in places, and it deals with lyrical themes like depression and sexism. What else can I say? The heaviness is still there. There's also a few steps closer to the shoegaze direction. I can definitely see the Alcest influence there, which is definitely a good thing. Also, Serena's vocals are just on point on this record. And what else? It definitely earns a spot on this list alone for the song Clickbait, which there's a part in the song where it just goes, fuck off. Right, APF Records have done it again with Possessor, Damn the Light. I was lucky enough to review this album and listen to it beforehand, and I did a Halloween special on that. Yeah, subtle plug there. For me, Possessor are a band that are consistently delivering the goods with each album, and Damn the Light is no exception from that. I think it raises the bar even higher than it did with Gravelands. So what else can I say? Do yourself a favour, get yourself a beer, and crank the volume up onto max and just blaze this shit up. So yeah. So you could probably tell that there's a couple of shoegaze and shoegaze adjacent artists on this list, which, to be honest, I'm not sorry about in the slightest. So following on from that, our next entry is Deserta with Black Aura My Son. Deserta is the solo project of Matthew Doty from post-rock band Saxon Shore. This album was recommended to me by a friend, and then I saw it doing the rounds on the Shoegaze, Dream Pop and New Gaze group on Facebook. So that twisted my arm into checking this album out. And to be fair, it did take a couple of listens to fully digest, but after that it was totally worth it. The dreamlike guitars and the synths really helped craft a really captivating album, and for me it sets the atmosphere for a nice warm summer's night. Next up we have Pallbearer with Forgotten Days. I was really overjoyed that Pallbearer were returning with a new album, and when the pre-orders were announced I jumped on that shit faster than the speed of light. While I can definitely say it's aiming for bigger things with the bigger production, and some people I've seen compare it to Boston, I disagree with that statement a little bit. It's definitely a really good album, and the ingredients that make Pallbearer one of the forerunners in the modern doom scene are definitely there on Forgotten Days. So earlier when I was talking about Mong Tong with their album Mystery, I said it was a very unique sounding record. Well, Plague Organ with their album Orphan is the metal equivalent of that. The album comprises of just one song, which just clocks in a shy under 40 minutes. It's like a blend of black metal, prog, death metal, and a bit of tribal as well. And it just makes for an experience that will just stick in your mind for a long time after listening to it. However, just to be a bit more succinct, let's just say it's just pure fucking chaos. Following on from that, Spirit Adrift with Enlightened in Eternity is my next album of choice. I was pleasantly surprised that they brought another album out. I genuinely didn't know that they did until I noticed someone posting about it on Instagram. I really liked their first album, and as you can tell, Enlightened in Eternity was no exception. To be honest, it's really refreshing to go for something that isn't bothered with like loads of subgenres or anything like that. It doesn't concern itself with anything like that, it's just metal. It's got some killer hooks, it got some amazing choruses that's got me singing along to them. It is a darn fine record. This was another album that I gave into the hype, and also this album won 4 Grammys. It is Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers. So after seeing so many people post this album up on Instagram, I decided to check it out for myself, and I was really glad to do so. This album served as a break from all the heavy shit that I was listening to. Not that I'm getting fed up of listening to that, but sometimes you listen to so much of it, you just need a break. Phoebe Bridgers served as a break from all of that. Best way to describe her sound is Sun Kil Moon meets American football. Also, what really does it for me is the lyrics. I think they're really masterful. I think Phoebe crafts some really intriguing stories with her lyrics, and that just keeps me hooked. Right, we're nearly there, guys. When you get an email from a PR rep saying you reckon that you're going to love this album, you damn well better believe it. That was the case with Astral Bodies and their album Escape Death. So when I'm reviewing an album, I tend to listen to the album multiple times, and once you've done the video, done the review and that stuff, you kind of give that album a break for about a month or so and then possibly go back to it. That wasn't the case with Escape Death. As soon as I'd done it, I wanted to listen to it again, especially when I got it on cassette as well. Personally, this album was really engaging with its blend of sludge and space rock. And I know this is going to sound like a broken record because I've been saying it all on this video. It really stuck with. So now we have Primitive Man with Immersion. So after their last album, which was called Caustic, which for me was an epic slab of pure ugly heaviness that pushed the boundaries right up to its breaking point, I always wondered how they were going to follow up from that 74-minute long album, and what they did was compress what made Caustic great and made it into like a shorter album, which was like 34 minutes. It loses none of the ferocity and the atmosphere of despair when listening to this record, and any Primitive Man record is still there. No one, in my opinion, quite does heavy like Primitive. Next up on my favourite albums of 2020 is Protest the Hero with Palimpsest. In all honesty, before this album came out, Protest the Hero kind of fell off the map for me. I hadn't listened to them much recently, maybe except for a couple of spins of Fortress. So when they announced a new album, I was like, cool. And then I checked out From the Sky and I thought, no, this is really good. And that reignited my interest for Protest the Hero. So when I got round to getting the album in my hands, I put it in my vinyl player and I was like, yes, my interest in Protest the Hero was further reignited. Definitely harkens back to like Kezia era on this album in my opinion, which is definitely a great thing. The album is absolutely stacked in greatness from start to finish. There's no bad song on the album, which is what I expect from these guys in terms of songwriting, which is on point. While it's not as heavy as some of the other albums, it's definitely still an amazing album. It was another pleasant surprise for me, and it is Nothing with the Great Dismal. So I was browsing Instagram and I noticed on someone's story that their new Nothing song came out, which was Say Less, and they described it in their words as My Bloody Valentine having hate sex with Linkin Park, which to be honest piqued my interest. And when I got round to listening to Say Less, I was like, I didn't think this would be the direction that they'd be going into. I thought they'd be carrying on in the same vein as Dance on the Blacktop a little bit. However, that is definitely a good thing, because on this one they've explored a lot more ideas on this record, The Great Dismal, and Nothing are a band that don't make the same album twice. The production, I feel, is top notch, and it really helps elevate their sound to new level. What is my number one album? As the dude from Highlander once said, there can be only one. And clearly it is the amazing album that is Shadow Work by Trapped. This isn't just an album, it is a work of genius. It is a portal to the mind of the lyrical genius that is Chris Brown. He is clearly an auteur. Nah, I'm just fucking with you guys. My number one album is Inlet by Hum. This album fucking blew me away, and it was a surprise release as well. Their first album in 20 years. I really love the direction these guys went in, including more metal elements into the songs. Still has that spacey feelings in those songs, however, songs like The Summoning on this album, which is my favourite song on the album, you're just fucking headbanging. While it is 55 minutes long, this album definitely didn't feel like it was dragging on for too long. And for me, it's an excellent return from these guys, and this album is my number one album. Right, so that was me and my favourite albums of 2020. I'm really interested to know what your favourite albums of this year was. Please let me know what they were down below in the comment section. Like always, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe. Also, I've got a Facebook page, which I'll be including a link in the description section, so if you want to give that a like, please do. I've also got a written blog as well, which will be on my description box as well, so if you want to read on that, please do so. So yeah, I'm hoping to get more videos out now that I've got the means to, so hopefully you guys will want to stick around for that. So, all I've got left to say to you guys is, I've been the dude who talks. Thank you so much for listening and for sticking around, for watching this video and for all your fucking support. It means the world to me. So, this is for you. Cheers, guys. Have an amazing Christmas and an amazing New Year. Alright, take care. Cheers.